Hello and welcome to Seddon Laceys Comic Stash. And this week, as we haven't done one for a while, it's top fives. And it is top five moments. So what we class as a moment can be anything that is something that has stuck with us or stayed with us. And probably by what moments we pick will probably tell you more about us than other things.
Yeah, it's a bit of a open your mind real wide, but I think one of the things that we talked about was quite key is that it's a moment for us and our connection with a comic book and maybe like all this other stuff. So rather than us kind of going through the annals of time and going, well, obviously when Gwen Stacy died, and sorry if that's one of yours, that's that's a moment. Yeah, of course it's a moment, but I things like that. Some of it I knew about it before I'd ever read it in a comic book because it was part of comic lore and things. So probably through our lifetime of reading things that have had an impact on us for whatever reason.
Yes. But before we go into our top fives, let's go to our corners.
So Chris, what? Oh no, I'm going so. So now you say so, then I'll say so. What's in your reading corner?
So in my reading corner,
I rolled my R then, like I'm a European singer.
so in my reading corner is a 1988 run four issue mini series, Peacemaker.
The current John Cena Peacemaker, that character, yeah.
Yes, that character,
yeah.
But a very much non-PC, very of the 80s version. So set whilst we still had the Cold War on. Terrorist attacks, Peacemaker goes all nuts and kills lots of people. And his dad's a Nazi and sees him as a ghostly spectre.
That age-old story. We've
all
been
the
there.
way through. This was a decent little 4-issue run. But very much of its time, there are slurs in there that definitely wouldn't get put into comics these days, which they could get away with, I guess, then.
I kind of wanted to ask you what the slurs were, but I don't want our video to be taken down. So, yeah, let's not go with what they said.
But yeah, it's quite interesting because this is on DC Infinite, and there is only 2 Peacemaker sort of standalone things. There's this series, and there's a retelling of Peacemaker's origin from about 4 or 5 years ago. Because I was like, after watching the TV show, I was like, I need to read some more I need to read some Peacemaker because he's a fucking fun character. In the comics, he is not a fun character. Well, in his standalone stuff, anyway. I think I might need to sort of crack into some Suicide Squad to see the fun Peacemaker.
You don't get a fun one there either from memory. He's never been, or unless I've missed something dramatically, and probably like more modern interpretations, but he was never the character that he is now. But I guess because it's the Suicide Squad as it is, like certainly the James Gunn one, that's what he does, isn't it? He kind of takes his characters and gives them a darker, lighter side. It's not like they're all just comedians, but yeah, traditionally kind of not that sort of character anyway. And one I haven't had a lot of experience with, to be honest. And I didn't even realize this existed. So I'm kind of glad you put it on the radar. The writer, Paul Kupperberg, I think it is, I'd read some of his stuff at the time. But only little bits and bobs of his. So I wouldn't say I'm massively au fait with his work either. But partially, and here's confession time, and you know this, but I still haven't seen Suicide Squad. It has just not been on any of the streaming services I have had, so therefore I have not watched it. And because of that, I've not watched Peacemaker, and I hear great things about both, and I will get to them at some point. I do feel like the TV show might be a little bit more of a struggle for me because of my vitriol and absolute abject hatred for John Cena.
See,
And anything that
I
he's in.
am a staunch hater normally of Juan Cena,
Yeah.
but this was just so 180 of everything you ever see of Cena. He's free swearing, drinking, loving 80s hair metal, being a smart talking badass that kills people. It's just like he is a fucking fun character. And it's just like one of those. I'm just like, where did this come from? This isn't Cena, and this isn't the sort of character I expect. And
I guess it's acting, isn't it? I guess that's the truth of it. He's doing that acting thing that actors are supposed to do. But I think because we've seen one of the problems, like I have the same thing with The Rock now, and really do now, is I barely can get through a trailer with him in now because. And for him, maybe slightly different because he does the same performance in everything he does.
The Rock does The Rock.
Yeah. However, I think one of the hard things for me, being a huge wrestling fan, is I saw these fuckers week in, week out for decades. In The Rock's case, but like I just by the time they start doing anything else, I'm just like, no. I've seen you more than I've seen people in my family. I've seen your face more than I've seen my mother's at this point. I don't want to see more with you in. So yeah, I do think that might be a bit of a struggle. But I do wonder about things like this because again, going back to let's go with James Gunn led vehicles. So when James Gunn did The Guardians and The Guardians got huge in a cinematic way, there already was stuff of the Guardians as they are in that movie. And don't get me wrong, I think post that movie, they become even more like the movie versions of them. But it wasn't that far removed from them not being that. So I think people kind of go, oh, well, what other stuff is there about this character that I like? And as you say, in some cases, there's quite a dearth of it, and it's very, very different. So I probably can see why bookshops weren't full of this as a limited trade to sell off the back of Peacemaker, and why they were trying to knock out some new stuff pretty quickly to cash in on it. That's remotely like what you were getting then. But
yeah, as I said, with Guardians, after seeing the first Guardians film, I went and bought one of the definitive Guardians ones. Was reading through it. It was like until right near the end, because it was like through the years. It had like the Origins of Groot was the first one.
Yeah,
and like all the way through. It wasn't until like the last one or two in there that were from like a couple of years before the film was made. Was any of the wisecracking and any of that sort of stuff? There were bits still that were there. Like Quinn still always had like his music, and Drax was Drax, but it wasn't wisecracking Drax. It was just arsehole Drax. And
well, and maybe one day we'll do it as a show. We can go back to there is an event called Annihilation, which is where the Guardians, this version of the Guardians, kind of start. But I don't think they expected for the Guardians to necessarily start here and for it to turn into what it was. There was just like a load of kind of limited series on, and they were tacking on and talking about all these characters, and then this kind of flowed out from it, and it's great, but that is quite as superhero stuff goes and cosmic superhero stuff goes. It was quite bleak, and this was more about like a load of losers coming together in a common cause, and when it first starts coming out, I'd say there were a lot more darker and realistic. But because of that, because they're more darker and realistic, you start to see that side of it. Like Rocket is just generally like a vicious, nasty little bastard. But some of that's funny. And then I think they started to kind of flow these characters and build up those relationships. But the Drax in the comics, for most of the years that Drax existed, is dramatically different from the Drax in the film. But you read a Guardians comic now, and he's like Drax in the movie. Yeah. But it built up over that period of time, and then they made a great movie out of it at a point where, and as I say, the comics have slightly lent into the way that the movie went and things like that. But interesting kind of how they get there. But Peacemaker, and I think probably the same for a lot of those characters that are in that Suicide Squad movie, is I don't think there's a wealth of material out there that would be in the slightest bit reflective of how they are in that movie. So
Yeah.
yes, there are people furiously writing and drawing to cash in on it now.
Yes. What have you been up to in your corner?
A very quick jump into. I started Deceased, so that is DC East,
Yes.
and it's it was from Tom Taylor, and for anyone who is and probably would be more familiar with Marvel Zombies in the Marvel universe, very much kind of akin to that. So grounding it in more DC fare. It's the anti-life equation that Darkseid has, and he infects the planet Earth, with this, and 90%, I want to say, get infected or started to get infected, and they're very kind of zombie-like with it. But it's that romp of superheroes getting infected with something and having to fight other superheroes. So, like, let's say Superman isn't infected, but or a good example from early on is Robin gets infected, and then
Yeah.
there's kind of hero on hero violence. It's real a shame, because like it's the first bit of Tom Taylor that I'm reading, and he's quite a renowned writer of now. So I thought, oh, this will be the place to start. It's other than Injustice is that DC game.
It's one from the game, yeah.
Yeah, he'd written a load of stuff for Injustice, like a kind of web comic. But I thought, no, let's go with kind of like his comic DC debut, and I was really looking forward to it. And unfortunately, it fell really flat for me. I think it has a good audience, like a large audience. I think some people really like it, but it's one of those series, and I find this quite often with those Elseworlds, like what if things of going. There's no stakes in it. So
Yeah.
at the end of an episode, and this doesn't happen, but let's say it did happen, at the end of the first issue, Superman ripped Batman's head off. It loses its impact because it's not Superman ripping Batman's head off.
No.
It's kind of a random other universe version of it. But I mean, it looks nice, and of course, like, it allows them to do interesting stuff with heroes that never would have fought going against each other, and conflict that wouldn't normally be there. But I got 3 issues into it, and I just went, it's fine, but it's just kind of leaving me a bit cold. So it went back into the virtual DC universe, DC Infinite reading pile, probably never to be brought out again.
Yeah, it's one of those. I looked at the covers and stuff and gone, "Ooh, they look pretty," and it saved in my list to get around to. But it wasn't one that was like, "Oh, this is going to be the second coming of something." And I sort of already knew that what it was going to be.
Yeah.
Is just, oh look, Marvel did a zombies, we'll do a zombies. Zombies
and
are cool.
There is a bit of that to it. As much as they make it very DC, but by doing it as the anti-life equation and stuff like that, it almost does have a bit of a sense of going, yeah, Marvel did this, so let's do our version of it. And comparably, it's probably as good, possibly even better, because I didn't get into it, and I know there's like some follow-ups to it, and they still release stuff to this day because it's quite popular, but potentially suffered from being the second version of it. Yeah. And as I say, I wasn't even a massive fan of Marvel Zombies when they did it, so it probably was never going to be for me. But I will say, I'm not parking Tom Taylor stuff. I've parked that and gone, okay, I'll jump forward and maybe get maybe rejoin with some of his main universe, where it probably has a bit more impact later down the line.
Yeah, so it's one of those with that. I'll probably sort of scan through a couple just to look at the art and be like, "Ooh, that's pretty, that's pretty, that's pretty," and then, never do these worlds meet again, sort of thing.
I do think you'll quite like it. It's the honest truth. I think, because I think, like when we've covered stuff before, I think you're not as canon in the universe as I am. Yeah. I don't think you quite have that same and I say obsessive level for me. My God, compared to some people in fandom, I'm actually quite relaxed about it, but I still feel like I've got that side to me of going, well, if it doesn't make sense in the 60 years of publication and the 80 million copies there are, then you failed somewhat. And yeah, I do find that more often than not, I'd say the what if, the Elseworlds kind of stories just leave me a bit colder than it seemed to other people.
So, what we will do now is go into our top fives.
Five.
But before that, I hear you have an honourable mention.
I do. Like, I think on all of our other top fives, it's become synonymous that I rock up with 72. But I was really good. I was really good when I did this. Is I did write the long list, but I just struck things out very, very quickly because they were great moments for me. But I knew they weren't going to make the top five. But there was one which I would say was very, very close to making the top five, and probably was in there for a long time. And I was sort of teetering other things out of it that I knew I wanted in it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to let this baby go. And it is Time Machine again, not 88 like Peacemaker was, but not far off it. January 1987, and this is from the Avengers. And I've talked about it before. I think in not only our intro to our origin stories, but in top fives before, and it is the Masters of Evil Siege of Avengers Mansion storyline. And it was early on in my reading comics life, and I said before, the villains kind of win, and for the most part, they win for the bulk of this story. But this particular issue, the moment that stayed with me is Jarvis is the butler, so not quite like they are in the movie. If your movie's more than comics, he wasn't like a distorted voice. He was an old dude who is a butler. Think Alfred from Batman, but before they gave him loads of other stuff like around him. But he is, and he was a character I had got to know over a couple of years, and he would do butler things, and he would be around there and he'd be helping them. But he had no powers, he had nothing. He was an innocent, I guess, just a guy doing a job. And in this issue, they have taken the mansion and they have captured people and they have captured Captain America. And the moment that stayed with me from this is Mr. Hyde, who is a big, beefy, burly bastard. Zemo gets Mr. Hyde to beat the living shit out of Jarvis in front of Cap to to let him know we've won. And it's a moment for me because this was in my early part of reading it, and it had always been good guy hits bad guy hits good guy, but they're all powered. This isn't normals. A normal who is a normal person just trying to do his job was never kind of a victim. And this kind of had a really sadistic side to it in a very colourful Avengers comic. But the moment always stayed with me because I just went, wow, there is more to this as a medium than just good guy hits bad guy. Like, they can touch on what happens when a regular person gets involved in this, or what happens if the bad guys realise that the way to really hurt the good guys is to take someone who isn't like them and effectively torture them in front of them. And it is a real moment for me because those panels stayed with me for right up until now. Like, when I think about comics and when I sat down to think about this, it was one of the first things I put down on there. Not necessarily, as I say, it got bumped out of the top five, but it has stayed with me all these years as a moment where I just go, whoa, comics are different than I thought they were.
Yeah. So I will start with my number five.
Number five.
And is from V from Vendetta, when V has just saved Evie from being raped by the Fingerman and watches them blow up Parliament, which in the film is the Old Bailey. I don't know why they switched it round to being the Old Bailey.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
Parliament is the end one when that's actually Downing Street, but films with their license to change things. But yeah, this is just, I think, one of those great moments of you see what V can do on both levels. He's there as the vigilante saving the innocent streetwalker, with young Evie being 16 and, pleasure for two bits, sort of, that she is at that point, and then you see V blowing up Parliament because fuck you government, and fuck you Thatcher, because that's who that was aimed at that time.
How long, to keep this somewhat topical and British, how long before we get a V for Vendetta sequel about Liz Truss?
Oh.
I mean, she wears the same clothes as Margaret Thatcher, so we need a comic book that follows up on this and goes, right, you put another one in, let's go.
Killing Mog and his fucking army of child chimney sweeps.
Don't.
And the rest of the fucking bastards. But yeah, it's just that, to me, was just like a great early sort of, here we go, this is what this is about, and it being English as well, I think helps. That it's very relatable.
Well, and I know, like, not to kind of bury the lead here, but I know we've said this before on other ones. I think, and I think this will pervade a lot of our stuff here as moments. Is it might less be about the singular impact on the characters, and it might less be on the maybe the impact of the industry, but I think quite often we lean into moments where we go, shit, comics can do this.
Yeah.
That kind of realization that as a format, it can do very different things to what we expected.
Yeah, so that is why that is my number 5.
Well, not to be a copycat sitting on a doormat, but it's not V for Vendetta for my number 5, but it is another Alan Moore. For me, it is from Watchmen, and it's from issue 11, and it is. And I'm starting
me because I don't know. I've only ever read it as a whole. I've never read it individually. So I don't know.
Right in the end, let's go with that. It's and I am starting to see a real pattern, because I've just looked. And I look over here, so I put down which ones I did, and I have noticed a real theme to mine, and maybe it speaks to me. But in particular, it is the Ozymandias reveal. It's the reveal of his plan. Now, I had seen multiple times pre this villains go, ha ha, and here is what I will do, ha ha, this is what I will do, etc., etc., right way back to like kind of well, and like Batman 66 and things like that, like the kind of intricate plans, and then I will tell you my plan,
because you will die,
and this moment again gave me that kick up the arse of going, wow, this can be smart. And it's a very simple smart, but it was the first time I had seen it done in a comic book, and I think it's done amazingly well. So he does his big reveal, and then when challenged on you've done your big reveal, he says, and I've got it up here just so I don't kind of butcher it, do it, Dan, I'm not a Republican serial villain. Do you seriously think I'd explain my masterstroke if there remained the slightest chance of you affecting its outcome? I did it 35 minutes ago. And like it was that, and it's a great series. There's so many great moments in it, but that one was just like, I remember reading it and just going, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Of course the villain would tell them after they'd done it. And it just seems so obvious, but so strikingly smart way to do it. And of course, in this and in so many others, the villains are often portrayed as super smart. That's the point of them. But there's kind of that dumb thing that they do. And this just kind of went, oh yeah, you can do this, and you can actually deliver a story of what happens after they do that. But yeah, just absolutely an amazing moment for me. But it seems so obvious when you say it out loud, but people weren't doing it.
Yeah. So my number 4 is for something I've only recently read, but read because of the show.
Ooh.
Is Civil War and the explosion of the school. Because that's one of those moments of, oh shit.
Yeah. Shit got real.
Shit got real very quickly. And the thing is, as we said when we did the Civil War special, we always see these big fucking fights where buildings are getting smashed up and shit breaks and explosions and all that, but there's never a this is what happened. This is the results of this. This is the casualties that have come out of what has happened. And this shows you that 614 people die because of a superhero fight.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, it in a way seems like breaking the fourth wall, because it's like, here's the shit you never see, you're not expected to think about, and it doesn't happen. But actually, here we're telling it.
And in a lot of cases, I mean, the truth of it is you don't see it, because realistically, this is what would happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, if you have people doing this, like, innocents would die. But of course, if you stop to do that, you'd probably stop reading superhero comics, because you'd go, "Fucking hell, this is really dark." But it's a time when they acknowledge it. They acknowledge the consequences of what could happen. Amazingly enough, I was having a conversation with someone today, not yourself, exactly about this. And it was one of those rare moments in life where the gateway to talking to anyone about comic book characters these days is talking about movies or TV, isn't it? There's so much out there where it is. But anyway, we were having a sort of relative conversation about like Marvel movies, and it was one of those magical moments, because we were saying about like what Marvel movies we liked, and I said about Civil War, and one of the guys I work with said, "I don't really like it," and I was like, "Well, why?" And they said, "Well, because what it didn't have that the comic book had," and straight away I was like, "Right, sit up." He likes comic books. He's read it. But he picked that specific moment and said, it feels like a significant enough catalyst to start the government wanting to change things and the heroes to significantly divide. Whereas he said, like, that part in the movie, you know, they blow up a rando building with rando people in there and not many, and it felt a bit weaker. And I stand by that. I think it's true. I still think it's a great movie, but I think it would have been hard for him to do the school kind of blowing up, because they didn't really have the wider group of characters that you have in the comics to do that with, that has some significance. But yes, it is a moment, and it is a moment because I think it keys us into going, just imagine this was the real world, and just imagine what the impacts of these things are, but probably a moment you can only tap into every now and again, because God, you'd have no one left on the planet after 5 issues of anything if you tapped into all of that.
Especially anything Hulk related, anyway.
And you know, like, it's often debated because there have been many a storyline in the Hulk that have touched on this, but they've touched on it more in a how few victims there are of anything he does. And there have been kind of some spurious things written in there to kind of suggest why there isn't and things like that. But yeah, you know, like, he's a force of nature to a degree, and the devastation would be huge. And that's good for forwarding a particular story. But if that was every issue, it would be very different, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So what is your number 4?
So partially, and here we go, flogging a dead horse, this somewhat leads back to the Avengers Mansion siege. But I'm not just calling out every moment from that storyline, but fast forward a number of years. In fact, I'm just going to grab the year in particular here. So fast forward to 1997, and I've been reading Marvel comics a long time at this point, and my love for superheroes and Marvel is fully ingrained in me. But I've seen a lot, and I'm probably at this stage starting to very much tweak out into indie stuff, because I'm looking for something different. But comics industry wise, Marvel had been struggling financially. The X-Men were a juggernaut, but everything else was kind of not a juggernaut. And at this stage, they had it's the Heroes Reborn phase, where the image creators had gone and taken a load of their business with it. The comic book industry had imploded on sales, and actually, to try and reinvigorate sales, Marvel had given up Captain America, Iron Man, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four to Image to do series to try and rekindle them, and they weren't very good. We may cover them one day, but Marvel, in its publishing line, went, well, okay, now that they've all gone, a world without heroes, as it was called, new concepts and new stories come up, and this is Thunderbolts. Now, I don't even know whether you've ever experienced the Thunderbolts or know anything about the Thunderbolts.
I have not. I do know of them because there's a new film coming. So I saw the announcement and was like, "Who are Thunderbolts?" and did a quick googly to see.
So the Thunderbolts have progressed a lot over the years. Again, like they had a long run and things very much change and get darker later on. But this is actually the first issue. So bearing in mind where we are in the world and where we are in Marvel publishing, they have a 2-issue kind of appearance where they show up in the Hulk comic. And it's just this group of heroes. They show up, they do hero shit, they go away. Yeah. Then Thunderbolts #1 comes out, and you're introduced to this totally new cast of superheroes. None of them are known. None of them have been used before, other than this Hulk run. And you've got like Citizen V and Meteorite and Atlas, Techno, Mach 1, and Songbird. I was trying to remember. And I read it, and I quite liked it. It was Kurt Busiek writing it, and I just went, "Oh, you know what? This is a fun kind of new group of heroes. I'm along for the ride. This could be quite good." And we probably should have said this at the front, and I might flash something up. Spoilers for things that happened, but it is called Comic Book Moments. So they do their hero thing. They get a press conference. They do like ta-da, and then you go to them after that, and they're just chatting. As I imagine you would think probably heroes would chat after the fact. And then you turn over to the last page and you find out that they are the Masters of Evil. And that this is actually just a big ruse to gain public trust, to forward sort of kind of villainous things. And of course, like to show that, you get to see them in the costumes they are, but then kind of above them are images of what they were. And all of these people were from that Master of Evil. And it's a moment for me because, again, I'd never seen this done before. I'd never seen this as a twist, and certainly not for someone to go, here is an ongoing series about this group of villains pretending to be good guys. And it captured my attention, and I was just like, wow. And of course, it was a younger me, but it knocked my socks off to the point where that moment has always stayed with me. I kind of wish I could have a moment like that again, maybe in modern times, because I think that concept could be taken even further with the darker tones and more realistic tones that we see now. But yeah, it's a brilliant moment for me, crafted amazingly, because everything up until that point was so formulaic, but done well. To then kind of go, shit, that is a twist I never expected. And of course, it jumps off of one of my favorite storylines anyway. So it's reusing those villains from that. And it's kind of like, well, we went away and we thought of something else to do 10, 11 years later in publication history. But yeah, I absolutely love it. I would heartily recommend reading it. But I will say it's very much of the 90s. So, and Kurt Busiek's a very good writer. And when I say of the 90s, I think he's one of the better writers plying their trade in the 90s. So it's good 90s, but it is still 90s. For those who are watching this maybe much, much later when the TV show or the movies come out, very different than what you get here. But there's reasons why you get to Thunderbolts and what the movie will be like, because the story does follow on and change quite a lot. But yeah, a real breathtaking, knock my socks off twist that had impacts as well.
Yeah. So my number 3, and the start of the obvious Batman run, because you knew it was going to be, because of it being me.
Yes.
Bane Breaks the Bat. Obviously, we
just for a quick plug. Yeah, I was going to say we've got a video about that, so feel free to step back into the annals of time and watch us talk at great length about Bane Breaks the Bat. But yes, go on. Sorry.
So Nightfall 1. That point where the hero is broken, and that page of Batman being cracked across Bane's knee in the most ultimate super backbreaker of all times.
No one could do that justice in wrestling after that ever again, could they? You see a backbreaker, you go, "Oh, you're nothing. You can't do Bane to Batman, can you?"
Obviously, with this one, I hadn't read it until we did the show for it, but the image of that page I had seen before, and I knew of it, and I knew what it meant of Bane breaking the bat, and it's just one of those images that will always stay with you, and it is that first moment that in like all the Batman stuff that I'd read sort of prior to that, coming up to this, is the first moment where Batman is vulnerable. Batman is broken. He gets fucked up, but he's straight back up the next night and back at it. He's just a few bruises before he puts on his cape and cowl.
Oh, and often not even acknowledged, is it? He'll go through like the 5-issue massive story that would destroy any other human being, but then a new story arc starts, and it's just like diddle-doo, off we go doing the Batman things, and this is. But I mean, as I say, not to spoil kind of our talk about Nightfall, because honestly, give it a go because I really enjoyed doing it. But it is that it's a moment that's a payoff for many issues that build you to it as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see that attrition of the body, and to a large part, obviously not this moment, but you see like the champion of his spirit, the fact that he carries on going even though his body's failing him and things like that. And of course, as the ultimate FU to his body failing is the villain coming along and actually physically breaking him and breaking his back.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird though, isn't it? Because like, for as much as I love Nolan's Batman trilogy, and I do, it's one of the things from the Batman trilogy where they try to do something similar, where it doesn't have anywhere near the gravitas and the pomp and circumstance that I think the comic managed to get along with it. It's almost like kind of and then that happened in the movie, rather than it being a prime sort of cumulative moment in the movie.
He's not had the 4 nights of absolute terror beforehand where he's had to try and take down every villain.
Yeah.
To then have his
in the movie, it just feels like he's kind of just had Batman-esque things going on, and he might be a bit out of practice, and he's just come against someone rock hard. So it loses a lot of that impact that I think the Nightfall moment had.
So, what is your number 3?
Well, like, it's a bit movie-ish again, but it really is the comic book, and it is nothing to do with the movies, because it was a moment that if you'd have tasked me this before the rash of movies we've had, it would still be a moment with me. It's the snap from Infinity Gauntlet 1. So this is Thanos, who's got the Infinity Gems, and looking at the reader that I was at the time, I know what happens in comics. The good guys all get together and they beat the bad guy. Normally not in issue 1, so you think there might be a degree of peril here, and we might have the upper hand for 5 issues before they turn it around, but never before and never again, because I don't think you can do this again after this moment. There's in that first issue, you have the moment where the heroes are approaching and the bad guy snaps his fingers and wipes out half of the universe. And that was a moment for me, because not only do I think it's an iconic moment in it, and again, the fact that it's a snap, even more so, but the villains don't win very often, but they might get the upper hand, but never to this level. And never have I seen a mainstream comic up until that point, do genocide of this level. Now, admittedly, like, it's kind of not targeted, but it was. It just, I just went, you said about like the school blowing up in Civil War. You just went, oh my God, shit got real.
Yeah.
Like, how are they going to come back from this? And of course, like, it's a comic, so you presume that ultimately they'll find a way to undo the universe spanning things that they've done. But it had that extra element of going, wow, like, write yourself out of this one, fuckers, because that's quite a significant thing you've done. But I say, taken on a different life now, because many years later, sort of 30 plus years later, it's now an iconic moment in most people's consciousness, because it is what we get towards the end and the culmination of the first 4 phases of Marvel. Sorry, first 3 phases of Marvel. But I think on the printed page and for comic book fans, certainly comic book fan like myself, this is an unparalleled moment of this sort of thing. And hats off to Jim Starlin and Ron Lim, who was penciling it. They told the story excellent to get you to that point where it was ultra believable, and it just looked amazing. It just looked stunning on the page.
Yeah, it's one of those that is for one of my for my sins ones that I've not read.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was because for a while until we obviously got Unlimited or whatever the Marvel one is.
Yeah, it's Unlimited. Yeah, yeah. Sponsor us, Marvel Unlimited.
Getting the oh fuck, we need this to start, and then there's all of these bits and all these bits. Whereas on that, they've got it as a whole sort of flow where it just runs through every issue in the correct order. So I'm like, yeah, I will crack into that at some point.
Spoiled it for you, though. Sorry, mate. Spoiled it before you read it.
Bugger.
There's a snap.
Duh!
Nope.
So my number 2 is a moment that proves that all humans are arseholes and should never be trusted. Because the people decided for this moment to happen. Joker killing Robin. Jason Todd version of Robin in a death of the family.
Do you know what? Before you go on, I didn't even think of this, and I feel bad I didn't think of it because yes, my God, you're right. What a moment! But yeah, oh my bad. I didn't even make my long list because I just totally forgot to put it in it. But spot on.
So this is it for 2 reasons. One, people were given a choice in the issue before the final issue. Joker kills him or Joker doesn't kill him. You decide. And the masses wanted death. And by God, did they get given a death. Joker goes full sadistic cunt and batters him to death with a crowbar. And the look on his face as he is smashing his skull. I'm hoping that you're going to spicy the smashy. You're muted.
And yes, I just realised I'm muted. No, I'm going to put pictures of kittens up for that part. Kittens! Lovely kittens!
And just art. And I read this in the 90s. So I came to it 10 years after it happened because I wouldn't have been reading comics when this came out because it was in 88 and I was 4. But just even then, the level of violence was stupidly more than what you would see in any contemporary stuff at that time. You know, you'd get Joker being a little bit sadistic, but this was super fucking violent. This was Clockwork Orange level of ultra violence. And it was just that moment I was just like, this isn't Cesar Romero. This isn't Nicholson.
Yeah.
This is a fucking motherfucker of a Joker, and I like this.
I wonder whether I didn't consider it because I sort of said that at the top end of the show, it sometimes this was about like so you even though you say you read it in the 90s, you experienced this almost kind of live, whereas I knew this story existed and I knew how it happened and I knew what happened before I ever read it. So I guess for me, like the moment didn't have that wow, and then I turned the page and I went to it because I knew what was happening. But I think that even if you take out like the how it's done, I guess the real big thing is and you started off with this bit is this was us as the fan base. We were given an option and we were given an option of like vote for him to live or vote for him to die. And people died. And of course, I think it does make sense that once people voted for him to die, I think perfect sense to make this a really brutal killing because it's probably the writer going, fuck you. you wanted this, and now you can see what the comeuppances of you wanting something really violent and taking the really shitty and nasty thing. I do wonder though, because I think probably to a large degree it made the audience pay for blood even more.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they kind of maybe read the way it was delivered and went, "Oh my god, what have we done?" I think they probably went, you know, it's the Gladiators again, isn't it? Like, and not the ITV show, like, but the Gladiator kind of going. You go and watch someone get torn to pieces by a lion, and then you go, do you know what? As bad as I thought I was going to feel, next time I want to see a bear and a lion tear the person to pieces. And I think that's it got it tuned into that side of us as people, that kind of really nasty, gritty side that we can have to us.
But yeah, so as I said, this was one of those moments where I was just like, because this is pre-internet and pre-knowing that was there. This was just one of those random Batmans that,
yeah,
I think it was in the school library. It was either in the school
Nice.
library or the city library that I found it, and I was like, "Oh, Batman! I'll take it out and read it." And I was just like, because
They were prepping you for life. Every time you vote, it's potentially death of an innocent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what makes your number two?
And my most modern one is my number two, and I think I did notice as I was doing the list, like my moments started to thin out the closer we got to now, and I think there, to a large degree, it's because we've read a lot by this stage. You know, like same thing as TVs and music and whatever you're into. The more you've watched, I guess, the less things maybe knock your socks off
Or
and
they
rock your
have to
world.
be even bigger.
And I think I struggle a lot about that in movies. You know, you watch a movie and you really like it, and they do a sequel, and you know that probably you're not going to like it more because they just do it bigger, and bigger isn't always more impactful. It's just bigger, isn't it? So yeah, the moments thin out, and not because I haven't read brilliant stuff. I just think I'm less likely to be surprised by stuff for it to hit. But this one did. And this one's from 2008, and it's The Walking Dead. And it was The Walking Dead 48. And I'd got into The Walking Dead about 12 issues in. So I wasn't there when the first one came out on the shelves. And I went, oh, you know, black and white zombie stuff. We talked about the first trade. Excellent stuff. Really, really like it. And like a zombie movie or like a zombie TV show, although there wasn't, I guess, that many zombie TV shows till they made this into one. But you learn that cast of characters, but you know there's always peril there. You know, there's always peril that people might get lost. And this establishes quite early doors. You know, characters do get bitten by zombies. They do get killed. It follows a really interesting arc of kind of peril. Then they settle. They settled into a prison, and things weren't necessarily hunky-dory, but you felt like maybe the story had transitioned into this world of they'd solved a large part of their problem, and maybe this is how human beings, or this group of human beings, could live out the rest of their life and maybe re-establish society. However, they did have a problem with another human being, which is an often thing in Walking Dead. It's not generally the zombies that are the biggest threat. It is the other human beings and their wants and their desires. But this is recreated in the TV show. This is also, by the way, not only my number two moment in comics, but it's where I stopped watching the TV show, because they did not do this justice in my eyes. In fact, I think they ruined this in my eyes. But it's the prison. So they're in the prison and the other group come in to attack them. And like any story, the good guys are trying to escape. And you're sitting there kind of going, come on, good guys, escape. Come on, good guys, escape. Now, in the back of your head, you're thinking, well, there's some ancillary characters who may bite the bullet here, but they'll be over there. However, it's a singular panel, and when I think of comic panels, and it's quite a bad one to focus on, it's the first comic book panel that ever jumps into my head, and it is Rick's wife Laurie and their baby daughter being killed. Because there is a moment where a shot is fired as they are running away. Chris is gone. I might leave a little bit of this in. So impacted was he by my second biggest comic book moment that he's disappeared. Will he come back? Nobody knows. Also, while I'm waiting for him to send me a message, I might go and get a drink. You sort of said about that the Joker and how brutal that was, and just the way the panel is shown, and it is a shot through the back, and she is holding their daughter, who is a baby, and you get this visual of the bullet going through her back and through the baby. Now, someone could really go like, "My God, go and see someone," because if that is your comic book moment, then there's a problem with you. I think it's because I'd never seen something quite like that.
Yeah.
And it stays with you because you kind of go, it didn't feel gratuitous. It didn't feel like it was doing it because it was like, oh, shock value. It felt like this is where they wanted the story to go to, and this is what happens. And there's a lot of story that comes after this, etc., and it has some real amazing moments, even at an issue beyond that. But it kind of it's a combination for me as a moment of a major character getting killed and a child getting killed. Two things that you don't often see. The way that it being done was so kind of brutal and matter of fact. The fact that it's done in black and white actually made it really a lot harder to see. I mean, you'd think like if there was blood,
Yeah.
that would be that might have made it kind of less harsh, but I think it spoke to like a despair moment for the series, and I think it set so much of the tone for what this story is of going. It's a constant battle in this world, and even when you think things have got good, it will go bad again. But not only will it go bad, it will go the worst it has ever been. And just again, like someone says to me, comic book page, I see that.
Yeah. So my number one.
Our number one.
Can you
'Cause I
guess
think we've
what it
got
is?
I think we've got the same number one. I think.
So it could have been a multitude of parts of this book. The end where you don't know what happens. The beginning part when our hero lays out his soul. It could be the villain's origin story where we find out what it takes that can make a normal person become a supervillain. But it's not any of those parts of this fantastic story. It's opening a door and shooting a bitch in the chest. Killing Joke, Joker shoots Barbara.
It has I said earlier I'm seeing a trend in what mine were. A lot of mine leads to big villainous moments and big maybe kind of when you see how bad people can really be or how bad the world can, certainly in a world that's generally been presented as colourful and the good guys always win. And yeah, I think this is a moment that speaks entirely to that, doesn't it? You said about like Joker beating Jason Todd with the crowbar, but the sort of kind of cruelty of this being done to a beloved character is what really drives this home as a shocking moment. But again, I'll go back to what I said in The Walking Dead. Not a shock value moment because it's done with a purpose, it's done with a reason. And that reason isn't just generic cruelty, it is a real big moving point for the story and many characters.
Yeah, as I said, we could have had that beginning bit where Batman lays his heart out to the inmate dressed as Joker playing cards. We could have Joker's origin where he's in the Red Hood gang, falling in the vat, and then the joke laughing page. We could have that last page as a whole where you just don't know what happens. But this Joker just shooting Barbara, and he doesn't know that she's Batgirl. All he knows is that she is Gordon's daughter.
Yeah.
And he wants to get at Gordon.
Yeah.
And just the lines that come out afterwards, and the one-liners like, "Oh, you've like a coffee table edition."
Yes.
Spine's a bit damaged. and just still with that nasty jokerness of he is
The
such a cunt.
that level that he will go to just to prove a point, and the point he
Yeah.
wants to prove is that everyone would go to this place that I go to if you have the one bad day, and to prove that, I'm going to give you the worst day ever. And part of this is shooting your daughter in front of you.
Yeah.
And not even like a shoot to kill. It was a shoot to hurt, to maim. That kind of level of cruelty, as I say, just to prove a point. And yeah, it hits you like a ton of bricks, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the thing that also escalates this to a higher level is that he's there in a Hawaiian shirt
Yeah,
and a fedora, and
yeah,
he's turned up in the most casual, non-joker look
yeah,
to be like, do some day off, it's fine.
yeah, yeah. He's in his holiday outfit, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's like, this is what I do for fun. I prove these points and then do really shitty things for fun.
and then obviously not at this point in the book, but later on when we see Gordon at the fun fair, you then find out that he also strips her naked and takes pictures of her just for more torment.
Yeah.
It is just makes him the ultimate cunt.
You said earlier that we could have had, and so we share the same product as number one, but our moments are different. Because in that we could have, I do have a different number one moment from you. But you did mention it earlier. For me, it's the final page. And I think you're spot on about what you say about Joker and Barbara. I think it's an amazing moment. I think it's an iconic moment. I think the story doesn't work without that. But as you say, this is an issue full of, or a story, let's say, rather than an issue, full of amazing moments. But for me, the moment that sticks out for me that sits in at number one is that final page. I think, again, maybe by this point, I'd seen probably a lot of movies where things somewhat akin to this, maybe not done as well, had been done. That final page for me, that ambiguity, although I think lots of people do get quite passionate about this and say there is no ambiguity, clearly it was this or clearly it was that. Clearly for me, I know what I think it is, but I am very, very of a mind of going, for me it is that, and that's why it's so clear to me. But it is done, and why that part is such an amazing moment for me is I can't even think of since then when I've known a comic book to do that as well as it does. That bit of going, here are all the constituent parts of this story, and you will take from it what you do, and you will put your own spin on it because you'll apply your own experiences to it. And then when you get to the final page, you can decide what actually happens here. You can finish the story yourself because I've done it in such a way as it's open for you. And it doesn't almost matter. Like, he knows what he wanted it to be, but that's inconsequential at this point because it's done in such an amazing way that the story becomes about what I want it to be. Or even if I take out one, what my life experiences tell me would happen at that point. And I said earlier about the Walking Dead. If someone says comic book page, that flashes into my head. It flashes into my head, and I was deliberate about saying it always flashes into my head at the same time as this does as well. They kind of fight each other for the honour of page that stands out.
So if you want a full breakdown of Killing Joke, we did it for Christmas as a Christmas special.
And I promise we didn't just pick this and both pick this as number one to shill another episode. We're saying that about how brilliant it is, and I think it is the only one for me. I think this is the only one for me that went through my head of going, there are upwards of 5 moments in this that I would consider for a list. Whereas most other things, it was a singular moment for me, and in some cases, a singular moment that were 250 issues apart, that sort of thing. But but yeah, this is chock full of moments, and as I say, like I go for the last page, because what speaks to me is that amazing way of not only ending the story so beautifully, but ending the story so beautifully because it allowed me to fill in the ending. But yeah, I'm totally with you. It could easily be the Joker attack, and yeah, as you say, I do love that scene, the game of cards. I just think, or like kind of the dealing the cards out. You know, it's full of it, and we love it for that. I mean, it is the high end of comic book creation, isn't it?
Yeah. Obviously, if you go back through the things, it's my favorite book of all time. Um, so we did a whole special about it, and you know, we waxed lyrical about it, and
Yeah.
it is one that gets brought up quite often because it is,
I
God
think
tier to me.
for about the first 20 episodes, I don't think we went an episode without mentioning it. I think they've tempered down a little bit now,
but yeah, it's just, as I said, my top 5 could have been all of this.
I did wonder whether it would be. If I'm honest, there was a part of me that I thought when we recorded tonight, you're going to go, well, it's Killing Joke, Killing Joke, Killing Joke, Killing Joke, and Killing Joke. But as I say, like there was many that I wrote down in my list, but I just went, well, that's the one. And as good as the other ones were, I felt like like my other moments kind of trumped them because in some cases they're even like relatively similar. You know, as I said, my Laurie dying has a lot of similarities to like the shock of Joker doing this to Barbara, and probably invoked very similar emotional reactions to me, and in the same way as the Jason Todd death. You know, like I think there are a lot of similarities in there, and you could argue that like that's kind of the peak one. But yeah. If for nothing else, yet again, here's a top 5 with Killing Joke in it. So shock, shock, shock. And there was one point where I actually, as I was doing it and I was writing my list, some of the stuff, and I talked about a few things here that have made other lists for mine. And I think that's the truth of it, is some of this stuff will always cross many lists because you love them for a reason, and you love them because they have moments in them. You love them because maybe the whole story is fantastic and has a degree of consistency and that emotional connection. So I can't imagine this will be the last top 5 that we have that doesn't feature something from the Killing Joke, unless we do an episode at one point which is top 5 of anything that doesn't mention the Killing Joke.
Top 5 of anything that doesn't have the Joker in.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do that to you. That's too extreme. But yeah.
So, as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Down there, your top 5 moments. As you've seen from what we've come out with, it literally is just things that resonate with you. You know, when I,
well, like
anything which means something.
Well, I mean, we said, I mean, like if you went onto the internet, like you could probably get lists of like the top 1,000 most iconic things that happened in comics, because there's so many moments in comics, and I think they'll be different for everyone because it depends. We'll cover it in here. It depends when you read it, whether you knew about what happened beforehand and things like that. But yeah, I'm sure there would be many arguments for going, my God, there were so many more iconic moments than the end of issue 1 of Thunderbolts. But it's really about what is iconic and what is a moment for you. And someone who's reading Spider-Man way back in the day, I'll go back to the Gwen Stacy example. I imagine that rocked people's worlds back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that's not a great moment, but by the time I read that, I've heard about it for 20 years. So it's kind of softened the blow of what happens and things like that. But yeah, I'd love to know what pages have you turned and gone, oh shit, like that has stayed with me from that point onwards.
Yeah, I would imagine there's some people that will say like the death of Superman.
Yeah.
And things like that, which, will be those moments that will resonate with certain people. And
well, you said with Civil War, and I think there probably would be a lot of people, depending on age range and when they've come into comics. So maybe they've come into comics since the movies really took off. That I think a lot of their moments could be within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Excuse me, a little sneezy pops there. But you know, but that's because they're having those things hit them. I mean, like some of the ones I picked were from the 80s because that's when I start to read a lot of this stuff. And if I read them now, like if I'd started reading in the 90s and went back to read them now, would that be so iconic for me? No, maybe not. But yeah, let us know what moments hit you and why. I guess that's probably the more interesting thing for me. Of why are they iconic moments for you?
Yeah. And as always, click the bells and subscribe things, and then you'll know when we're up with more stuff.
Yes.
And not just comic book stuff. You can get our music fun and joy too.
Yes, you can. Regularly releasing. We're up to 3 releases a week at the moment, aren't we? So
Yes.
you get to hear us talk about some of the great songs of music and some of the ones that you've made me listen to.
Yet some of them you're still humming.
Oh, don't. I mean, that's not against your music taste. I think you've got fantastic music taste. But when you get it wrong, oh Jesus Christ, you go bad, don't you?
I do listen to some shit.
Yeah. But and again, we all do. But well, yeah, my God, the pits for you is the bottom layers of hell pits.
So yeah, if you like music, you can watch those, and we also do wrestling. With the stretch mufflers. Yes. I'm not doing the full thing. I can't do the voice today. I have to warm up for that. But
if you want to know what the voice is, tune into our stretch mufflers because like it scares the shit out of me every time he does it.
But until next time, more comic book joy. Watch some music reacts. Go on. Come on.
What's the Killing Joke Christmas special? Although on this channel you will notice because we release stuff onto here, it didn't come out at Christmas on this channel, but it still says Christmas on there. And watched our Nightfall breakdown. And come and join us in our community on Facebook.
Yes, and follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter, yeah.
So on Twitter, he does the pop culture production style one. I do the Seddon Laceys comic one, and you can follow our march through our 2022 reading extravaganzas.
Yeah, it's a reading challenge it is, but I mean, like, really, it's a nice way to follow kind of what we are reading because we tend to post up most of the stuff that we're reading, although sometimes for me it's fits and starts. Like I'll get to the end of the week and go, oh bollocks, I've forgotten to do that, so I whack loads of issues on there in one go.
Yeah, I sort of I try and keep up to date as I'm reading them, but sometimes they do go up in lumps.
Yeah.
And you can obviously also see how often I do get to sit and read.
Yeah.
Damn work.
Yeah, damn work. Yeah, and if you want to rob our house, or specifically my house, you'll know when I'm on holiday because all of a sudden, for like every half an hour, there's I read this and I read that, and that's because I've got away from work for a week and I actually get to sit down and read comics en masse.
So until next time, goodbye.
Bye.